ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm really honored, but at the same time challenged to speak up to this powerful statement by Priscilla. But the first word I would like to say is really to thank and congratulate the founder of the African Leadership Academy for having selected my friend Miko as the unsung hero, African hero. You know, one of the unfulfilled dream of Miko was the establishment, it has been referred to, the establishment of an African University of Excellence. He had explained this dream, shared this dream with former President Mandela, with former President Thabo Mbeki, and the former Minister of Education, Kader Asmar. And he made a presentation in my presence to the current and outgoing Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, Professor Bani Pityana. So he was extremely, this was an idea which was extremely close to his heart. And I believe there could not be a better place to celebrate Miko's life and achievement than this academy, African Leadership Academy. Because this academy mission, vision is partly and indirectly a fulfillment of the unfulfilled dream of Miko. That's why I think this day is an important day for those who have known Miko and who have discussed with Miko Rwayitare. Miko was a visionary. Let me start where Priscilla ended. It is a real challenge to give a correct account of the life and achievement of this little giant that Miko was. Miko was indeed small in height and his size, a contrast to the stereotype description of the very tall Tutsi of Rwanda. But Miko was an intellectual giant. He was a giant thinker and a visionary. He was a great strategist in his professional field. Miko was also a man of great heart, highly committed to his community and his continent as a Pan-Africanist. Miko had a strong sense of belonging, it has been said here, to his community, to his schoolmates. I remember how he organized a welcoming reception to one of his old friend and classmate, Dr. Kabatsi, with the alumni of Collège du Saint-Esprit, where Miko started his education. He had a personal attachment to his colleagues, his staff, and his friends, alumni. He expressed these values in making himself available to meet and chat warmly with his many friends. In his interaction with people, Miko, as Priscilla said rightly, was very humble, and he knew how to make people comfortable in his company. He was very pleasant and always cheerful. In the fulfillment of his social responsibility, Miko became one of the founding members in 2003 and vice president of the Alumni Association of the former students of the Jesuit Secondary School in Bujumbura, the Collège of Saint-Esprit. When the Collège de Saint-Esprit celebrated its Golden Jubilee in 2005, it brought together hundreds of alumni from all over the world. Miko generously contributed to the celebration. Alumni and former professors tasted and appreciated the Mont Rochelle wine, product of Miko, one of the college's best achievers. One other project of the Alumni Association, which was close to the heart of Miko, was and is still to transform this former Collège du Saint-Esprit in a Jesuit University of Excellence for Great Lakes region. This is still work in progress, and the president, the outgoing president of the alumni, Odas, who is here, and the incoming president, Jean-Marie, from next month, who is also here, are responsible for taking this project forward. Of course, with the many of Miko's friends have discovered some of his qualities and values after he has left us. Miko has been a philanthropist. We know now that he has made several important contributions to several foundations, such as Mandela Children's Foundation. Walter Sisulu Foundation also received a contribution to provide medical assistance to children who suffer from heart diseases. Miko has also offered important contribution to Pierre Buyoya Foundation in Burundi, which is devoting its resources in assisting street children, particularly in Bujumbura. But Miko was also a role model for many young entrepreneurs, African entrepreneurs. He played a role model very simply, very warmly, opening his books, his heart, his mind to all those people who visited him in his house while sharing a glass of wine. He will always offer a glass of wine to his visitors and discuss intellectual issues, business issues. I remember Miko being approached in 2004 by students from the University of Cape Town Graduate Business School, requesting him to give a talk at a conference on the theme Doing Business in Africa. As I myself attended the conference and his presentation, I was amazed how open Miko was in sharing his professional experience in developing his mobile telecommunication company from the scratch, hiding no secret, sharing both the challenges and success, and talking statistics and figures without any fear. From these few illustrations, we will remember that this great son of Africa heart, commitment and resources were directed to the well-being of children and education of youth of our continent. This is Miko's legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad that we celebrate Miko's life once again with over 170 young students, future leaders, and I hope, my hope, is that they all learn from the life and achievement of Miko. And I thank the family members who have inspired Miko, who have discussed and challenged sometimes Miko, that I believe we all have learned a lot from him. But the most important thing is that what we learn, we continue to apply this in our life and in our future, the future of the continent. I thank you very much.
As I look around, I see clearly that not everyone here would remember the year of 1977. This was an important year. You see, in 1977, I was a big shot. I was president of an airline. I knew presidents, ministers, and top executives. I had risen the ladder of a major corporate success. Surely, I had nothing more to learn from anyone. And then, something happened. Something so big that over the next 30 years, I realized how truly I really knew and how much I had yet to learn. That's when I met Miko Rwayitare. At the time, I was CEO of Air. As you know, everywhere in the world, CEO means Chief Executive Officer. But Miko would prove to me that it stood much more for the way he maybe 1,000 times described it to me. And to this day, I'm not sure he was kidding when he said CEO stands for completely erroneous and overpaid. I met Miko when he was the distributor of Hewlett-Packard in Kinshasa and had just won the award to install computer system in our airline. This alone tells you a lot about him. He had an engineering degree he had earned in Germany as a young man. Then he applied for and was appointed as a distributor of Hewlett-Packard. And then without such any political connections, remember, I was CEO. I had not even met him. He made the successful bid for the airline's computer system. Not an easy trick when it was a world of who you know rather than what you know. That never got in his way anyway. But then he already had the right kind of track record. A track record of hard work, perseverance, and an attitude, there's nothing I cannot accomplish. I believe that all of you enjoying the fruits of your accomplishments and talents here already know exactly what that means. I was curious who this person who won the award to install the computers. So when my staff told me that he, as the winning vendor, insisted on meeting me, I was happy to have dinner with him near my offices in Kinshasa. At the very first dinner, it became obvious that Miko and I shared values, some very important values. 3 values, actually. The first 2 were Bordeaux, red and white. And the third was champagne. That quickly led to another of the key business traits that characterize Miko: friendship. Not the superficial kind, but the real kind, where Miko's family became my family, and my family became his. As a matter of fact, today, at her insistence, my daughter Sharon, who grew up with Miko, insisted on coming here instead of going to an important event that she had in California. This was more important to her. But not long after, my airline decided that since the planes I was in charge of did not seem to be falling out of the sky, they would try me in building and managing their hotels, with the hope that they would not fall down with me as head of that operation. This took me away from DRC, or Zaire at the time, but on each trip, my friendship with Miko just seemed to grow naturally and effortlessly, pretty much like the natural forest here. There was no need for any real effort. I had already gotten to know Miko. Miko's insatiable intellectual appetite for everything new, new technology, new gadgets, for new adventures, for looking behind the idea tree, and the next tree, and the next. So about 6 years into our friendships, I wasn't surprised when he proposed to me what undoubtedly was the most stupid, absurd, ridiculous idea I had ever heard. You see, Miko had again done what was very dangerous for him to do, very dangerous. And I had always tried to warn him. But he did it anyway. He read about something new, and he just could not stop believing that he could make it happen. I'm referring, and perhaps many of you can surmise, the cell phone technology that first appeared in the 1980s. Miko read about it and simply decided, before I could try to stop him, that he and I were going to make it happen, that we would bring cell phones to, of all places, Africa. Keep in mind, at that time, the cell phone was a toy of the American rich. It cost $3,000 and was the size of a brick. People didn't even know what to do with them, except take them somewhere outside to call a friend and say, hey, guess how I'm calling you? Guess where I am? Here's how I personally knew that the cell phone was more expensive than anything that ever could put into an African economy at the time. At that time, all my lawyers were from big New York firms. And when I asked them about cell phones, they said they couldn't afford it. Now, if lawyers of New York can afford something, who can? But just as Miko insisted that he met the airline's CEO when he won the computer network, he convinced me that we just need to take it to the top, to the heads of governments. Simply as that. You know, sounds nice. Sure. The governments certainly can afford it. Let's just present it to the leaders, and then we'll make it happen to the people. Let's see. We're talking about changing phone systems and communication culture and threatening the economy, control, and money make of the country's largest companies. And if no one would try to put any obstacles in our way, and we're not just talking about political obstacles. You see, in order to even use a cell phone to call here, we would need the cooperation of the existing phone companies. Simple. Just think. We would then go to them. A good idea. Will you please make you less profitable, smaller, or maybe even obsolete? See what I mean when I say the most stupid, absurd, and ridiculous idea? Oh, yeah. There was another minor problem, or maybe a few more minor problems. Miko and I didn't have any cell phones. We didn't even have any contract to distribute cell phones. And we didn't have a contract with any supplier. And we had no right to use the airwaves. And we had no money, no financing. And we had no experience in the business. Nor did we know anybody in the business. So we have two things in our favor, as the MasterCard commercial says. One magazine article, $3. One cell phone, $3,000. One dream by Miko, priceless. We also learned to live by another saying, nothing is easy. So we started looking for a cell phone vendor and went to Japan to meet the monster electronic giant NEC. We didn't leave with any cell phones or systems, but we did have a lot of laughs. You see, the entire visit, Miko was dressed in an abacus, the traditional suit for old Zairians. Well, Miko had a large personality. He had large ideas. But we all learn as we don't get any younger, it's not good to be large at everything. So I finally had one over him. If I could make him laugh, a button of his abacus would routinely pop open. Of course, I was relentless, trying to make him laugh when it would be most embarrassing. And so in the end, what do you have from the trip? Two businessmen in a non-existent business, going halfway around the world to see if one of us could make the other laugh. I doubt this is a successful model for your MBA these days, or even getting out of 7th grade. But it was back then, because we learned how to make ourselves better as a team. The whole did become better than the sum of the parts. Even if these were only 2 parts. When we left Japan poorer and rather unsuccessful, the trip only steeled Miko's resolve. We headed for the United States. Now, what do you do when you can't find a cell phone to demonstrate to a major government leader? Where do you go? You go to the only place that makes sense. You go to a car rental agency. That's what we did. We went to National Car Rental because they rented phones as an option when renting a car. True story. After the rental people checked with the local asylum to make sure there were not reported cases outside of they rented us 10 phones. Now, to make this happen, we did what I came to learn was the only way Miko ever did things. Went to the top, to the president of National Car Rental. When he agreed to rent us 10 phones, we overheard his assistant saying, "Why are you doing this?" And he told her, "Because I'm tired of all my country club friends telling unbelievable stories of what happened to them, and this one will top them all." We took those phones and began applying and implementing our most important principle of technology. Something all of the engineers and other scientists here, if you don't already know, you will definitely learn. What we did, we kept our fingers crossed. The old age scientific trick, guaranteed at least to not make anything worse. So first, we kept our fingers crossed, trying to get in to see President Mobutu. Now, over the years, the president and I became good friends, and he was attending a convention in the States. We got the audience to see him in Washington, based again on that most important and serious principle, friendship. Then came the defining moment. When we showed him the cell phone, he said, his children already have walkie-talkies. So we persuaded him that those phones were different and deserved his attention. We uncrossed our fingers for nearly maybe 3 seconds, only to hand him the phone and urge him to call home, literally, to call his family at the palace 6,500 miles away. The call went through. It was kind of amusing call because Mobutu was the caller, but the phone was answered. He sounded like he was questioning why somebody would call him. Hello, hello, hello. How did we know that he had reached his family? Well, because we overheard him saying, "Tell me again, what you need the money for?" And you what? So Miko and I figured we did it. Smooth sailing from here on. Well, not quite. Actually, now Miko and I really began to sweat because President Mobutu apparently was a quick learner. He wanted to talk and talk and talk. After he got off the phone with the family, he wanted to call his ministers. We used a little bit of foresight in this by putting key government numbers into speed dial. Now the good news, he was really impressed. The bad news, he kept calling and dialing and calling and dialing. It occurred to me that maybe we should hand him a bill, probably a little bit early in our business relationship. So we left that meeting with a handshake, another business tool that is good, and only as good as the word of the owner of the hand. Was as good as gold? No, it was gold. The handshake said to us, you have the Zairean government franchise, make this work for the government and we'll help make it work for the people. So now our new business was starting to get real, which was pretty interesting, since it was unlikely we could go back to National Car Rental and ask them, do you mind renting a few thousand phones permanently? You can keep the cars. We don't need them. Maybe adding 100,000 phones to your inventory, and we need them for Africa. Lots of laugh. Miko and I could not afford the cost of a Motorola phone, $3,500 a piece, which at the time was much more than the annual wage of a Zairean citizen. We made a deal with the government. They would purchase the handsets, and we purchased the system. We found a cheaper system than made by a vendor in Northern Virginia, which seemed fine enough. But we had given our word that we would be able to make this happen for President Mobutu and his government. So now we found stuck in the middle. We had a customer, we had a product, we had a system. What we did not have was control of our product. And that meant we did not have control of our business. And so in reality, we did not have control of our destiny. What did we do? We bought our destiny. So we bought the small company in Virginia. So after being in the business for well over a year, we were finally actually in business. Sort of. Except for some minor details that were a little bit of a nuisance. Like legal rights, to use the airwaves. Like the needed cooperation of the existing phone companies. Oh yeah, like any money to build the equipment, like the towers and other equipment and infrastructure to handle call traffic. So we got back on our horses and rode into the big companies to see if they had some spare change. Or to see at least they had maybe strong sense of humor to finance an airline executive, a hotel builder, and a computer distributor in a business they were in for a year before they even had a product to sell. But what we did have going for us was something that kept competition away. You see, two of us on this earth, and only the two of us, were 100%, make 1,000% committed to bringing the cell phone with all the economic advantages of this advanced form of communications to Zaire, a country that is so often shunned in an economic factor in the global economy. So while we did not have much going for us, we did not also have competition. But I think one real difference is getting the funds we needed was that no one questioned our commitment and our perseverance that we showed, starting with the day Miko read that article and began chasing his dream, dragging me along with him. So we were able to find financial willing partners for a decade by using an old business trick. We paid people back. We honored our agreements. We had strong recommendations from the past about our trustworthiness. The first backers were Motorola and the World Bank. And I remember, he now died, Isaac Finkman of Motorola, saying something to me I will never forget. He said, "Joe, we do not lend to business. We lend to people." Although it seems like a lot of paperwork, it's really not hard a decision when you base decisions on the people behind the deals. Thankfully, Miko was able to pull all of that, all of his remarkable engineering, shall I say creativity, right into the financial paperwork for the financing. When I saw Miko's projections of how many customers we will have in the DRC, or Zaire then, I did have to suggest that he might want to check what the total population was and maybe cut his number a little bit. So we're not going to be accused to have more customers than we had people. Of course, despite all of the nice words said about our trustworthiness and all the friendliness, it did not stop the backers from extracting their pound of flesh. Let me put it this way. I'm especially happy to see Miko's family here because all of them were mortgaged, including the dog if they had one. We also needed legal rights. We needed rights to use the airwaves. But there was a slight problem in that regard too. You see, it was not so much as convincing government officials to agree with us making the regulatory changes we needed. The problem, believe it or not, nobody even knew what the law was and what the law needed, how the law needed to be changed. When we said we need to make sure the country's telecommunications law allows us to do what we agreed to do and give us the rights we need, everyone said, sure, of course, no problem. We'll do what Miko and you say. But when we said, great, please do the necessary drafting, they said, we'd love to, but we don't know what it is that we were changing. Nobody knows the law. Nobody even knew where to find it. Finally, it turned out that the law that we had to deal with, not only was it 46 years old, it went back to 1941. It was also Belgian. The country did not even have its own communication phones. What a reminder that was, and how far the country was behind and needed to go to catch up with the global telecommunications. But one by one, the pieces started falling into place. We obtained the necessary licenses, and the government made good to their word. They granted us the regulations that we needed, and the existing companies were required to cooperate. Meanwhile, Miko was unbelievably tireless in making sure that we were putting into place a first-class, gold-star operation. Part of that was the hiring of top talented engineers from the best schools. I personally stayed out of this. Not because I had nothing to contribute, which I didn't, but I couldn't imagine how he was going to pull this one off. And I didn't want to find out. Miko was literally competing with top international companies, with Zairean operations like General Electric, IBM, and top national companies, like the established phone companies. And he had to tell candidates, please come and work for a company that really doesn't exist, and whose only business was to run a test program for 12 months with the government to see if a measly 200 phones would work. And we're incurring large debts, and the phones don't work, we're out of business. Meanwhile, Mr. and Miss Graduate Engineer, could you please work tirelessly for us setting up a comprehensive telecom operation? Hell of a recruiting pitch, but he pulled it off. Years later, I came to learn why. When you get right down to it, Miko was as good an engineer as there was in the entire country. And that is not an exaggeration. This would become apparent to our recruits quickly when they would meet with Miko. And so when it came down round to it, they joined us because they would get to work with him and learn from him And that they certainly did. Thanks to Miko, we did not miss a beat when the cell phone standards changed from AMPS to GSM. A lot of companies around the world were left behind. And us, we were in the front of the pack. This kept the competition behind. We also had a standard way of protocol of being able to make good, favorable deals. So much that at one point the average monthly cell phone bills were over $800 compared to $10 today. Here is how we did it. Every deal would start with Miko or me making friends. He would impress people with his endless knowledge of the cell phone technology. And he and they would have what Miko called dinner without boundaries. Yes, dinner without boundaries. I think the guests thought that meant we can discuss everything and anything, when really Miko was just referring to the food itself. And Miko would get them to believe that they were becoming partners in this new and exciting world, and they were contributing to the advancement of the country, which all was true. And then, just when it came time where there was no more food to eat, and no more white or red wine and champagne to be drunk, and it was time to make the deal and get down to the dollars and cents, everybody's best friends, he would say the exact same 6 words he would say over and over, time after time. Have you met my partner, Joe? He and I weren't just good cop and bad cop. As far as the people we were making deals with were concerned, we were good cop and bad guy, period. But by setting up a first-class technical operation, Miko had assured that we would flourish and succeed. Which proved us also at times life does come full circle. You see, long after I left the airlines, it turned out that we needed to have our own airplanes. So we finally found a useful role for me. I doubled as a pilot. And we recruited his brother as a pilot also. At times I was flying back and forth across the country for days at a time, delivering parts, meeting with people, picking up money. It sure made our travel different and more productive. Once we demonstrated that we could make this complex business happen in Zaire, starting from less than scratch, something else happened. It turned out one of Miko's dreams was to give the people of Zaire the economic ammunition in telecommunications needed to advance in the global economy. We were able to expand operations, which called Telecel to 12 more countries in the very continent. But we learned quickly, and maybe we should have left well alone and just stuck to our business and good friendships in Zaire. More than once, competitors decided on a different kind of competitive strategies. Not to beat us in pricing, or in our service, or outspend us in advertising, nothing quite as routine as that. Nor did they want to merge and combine with us. The saying, if you can beat them, join them, didn't apply to our competitors. They actually put a little twist in the saying and decided to use the strategy, if you can beat them, jail them. Here's one incident that will give you an idea of how unwelcome we were by the existing old guard of telephone companies. Thank you very much. We had given a partner in Zimbabwe some old equipment that we expected to use later, only after we got the necessary approvals. We told him under no circumstances are you to operate and until we get the approvals in place. You can imagine Miko's and my blood pressure when our good friend and later partner, James Makamba, I thought he was going to be here today, but obviously he's not, told us that in fact our partner was operating the equipment illegally. As fast as we could finish the drinks, we got on our plane and went and arrived in Harare. The minister told us a law was being put in place by 10 a.m. the next day. I'd be in jail and the country $200,000 richer, thanks to the heavy fines that we were going to receive. That necessitated our New York and Washington lawyers pulling every string they could do to avoid me going to jail and the fine, and probably prohibition from operating there ever again. James always reminded me how he kept us out of jail, between saying, and often I think he wished he hadn't. In Madagascar, the enemy, a large European carrier, my lawyers have told me not to mention the name, decided on a simpler approach. We were working with the lawmakers to draft a new law so that the people could sell cell phones, and the necessary license would be made available to operators like us. Literally, the day before the law was to be voted on, that carrier got the writing slightly changed. Sure, they would be allowing the cell operational licenses, except the way they wrote it, they would have a monopoly for 7 years. What saved us from being presented and passed the next day, friendships that Miko had built. People on the inside alerted us to what was going on, and with our friendships, it was changed back so we and others, if they wanted, could openly compete. There are, of course, stories for each of the obtained licenses. Also for those we did not succeed, such as Nigeria or Rwanda. Then the one we acquired but we did not operate, Ukraine. I remember having drinks with Miko in his home maybe 10 years after that, with our friends Johnny and Williams, Johnny Walker and Poir Williams. And Miko pondering aloud about the early days. Joe, you know why we succeeded? I was expecting to hear from him due to our foresight, negotiating skills, perseverance, professional track record. Instead he said, because a few times I saw you mad, and sure as hell I didn't want to see you, what you would be like if we failed. What he should have said, because I was not going to rest until we succeed, and he did not rest until we did succeed. As the operation matured, we began to turn it over to new players, sending pieces that made sense, and ultimately decided to just end our partnership. The partnership was really nothing more than a vehicle through which to exercise the friendship that was the foundation of all that was accomplished. It was just 3 days before his passing that I happened to be visiting with Miko and 2 of his daughters in Maryland, reminiscing, and nothing had changed. Little did I realize how much that would mean to me now. Right now, somewhere, Miko is probably reading another article about something new and exciting, thinking, how can I get in on this? How will this help society? I want in. I guess he lost my phone number. I cannot think of a more deserving person to honor here today. Not because of Miko's accomplishments, they were inexorable, because of all the unwavering values he had, and which no doubt you students for whom we are here today already show values that I believe my story demonstrates were just not held by Miko, but exuded by him in torrential buckets. A boundless vision and refusal to allow to be constrained and narrowed by normal rules. Equally boundless enthusiasm and spirit of adventure. Never seeing a problem, just a challenge, and enjoying every minute of it. friendship combined with friendship and more friendship. An honorability, dignity, and trustworthiness that he knew was always coming back to lend a helping hand when you needed the most. Plain old dogged resiliency and perseverance. These are the values for which Miko stood and which pervaded his relationship. It takes, in this case, two to tango, and I'm ever so grateful that he chose me to fulfill his dream and accomplish his goals. I wish to add a word of advice to the students here today. Do not give up. Follow that dream, that instinct, that fire within you, and you will ultimately succeed. And oh yes, sorry, don't forget those three values. 2 Bordeaux, 1 Champagne. Thank you.
About 3 years ago, just a little bit over 3 years ago, in July 2007, I received a phone call, an email. I was in Brazil at the time, and it was correspondence from my assistant who was here in Johannesburg. And so I got on Skype and, in response to this email, and I said, and the thing was about, she said, there's a man who wants you to travel with him tomorrow to, as soon as you get back. To Cape Town. And I said, tell me a bit more, who's this person? And he said, he's a man named Miko Rwayitare. And I was like, interesting. I've been trying to meet this man for several years because everyone has been telling me that I need to meet this person. But I was tired. I'd been traveling a lot, and I was like, well, I'm not sure I can really make it. And they said, well, you're going to be going on his private jet to visit his wine farm in Cape Town. So I was like, maybe I can make that. And so I came the next day, and, this was my first time to meet Miko. I went to his house, and it turns out he had just ordered a private jet from a Brazilian company called Embraer. But the plane was only going to be delivered a couple of years later because it takes time to build the things. So they were bringing him an example of what he was going to be buying so he could go on a test flight. And he decided, and they said he could invite a few of his friends. So I got the invitation, and together with several people here in this room, actually, like Mr. Nicolas Vakira and others. And so we flew down on his jet, my first and only time on a private plane. We spent the day at his wine farm, Mont Rochelle, which is one of the many ventures that Miko had been involved in. And I got to know a little bit about him and met some of the folks that were close to him as well. But I mentioned, as I begin the story, I've been trying to meet Miko for several years. Why? Well, when I had graduated from Stanford Business School in 2004, I came back to Johannesburg with an idea. And as I shared this idea with people in Johannesburg, so many of them said, you need to meet this man called Miko Rwayitare because he has the same idea that you have. He has a very similar vision to what you have. And so, in fact, the first person, there's a woman called Rakia Oma who is not here, but she sent an email to Jean-Marie. Where's Jean-Marie? Jean-Marie, some of them, yeah. Saying, can you introduce Fred to Miko Rwayitare? And then there's another man, Jean-Pierre, who's an architect, also said, you need to meet Miko, and he's here as well. And why do they want us to meet? Well, the idea that I was talking about was an idea to build an academy which would identify the top young people from throughout Africa and train them to be the leaders for Africa. Because all the experience that we had and living and working across Africa, we had come to realize that leadership was our biggest problem. And we needed more entrepreneurs. We needed people with big ideas who can solve our problems in Africa. And so the idea was to build an academy that would do exactly this. We would identify the future leaders for Africa and train them to create a network of people who can really transform this continent and bring peace and prosperity. And Miko had exactly the same idea, which he was calling the Academy of Excellence. And he'd been telling everyone about this Academy of Excellence. The only difference really was that he was looking at doing it at the university level. And he wanted to bring, but a very similar vision, bringing the best and the brightest from across Africa, and providing them full scholarships, much like we do here with this academy. He had an idea of having about 2,400 students. He wanted to build a big university, completely endowed. And that was what he was working for. All the ventures that he had been doing was to raise enough resources so that he could build this Academy of Excellence. And that was why people said, you need to meet Miko because he has a similar vision to what you have. Well, so we met that day, and I was trying to tell him, so we're doing this thing, let's go, whatever. He wasn't really interested. He just wanted to get to know me. And that was the man that Miko was. He really invested in relationships. And so for the first day that we met, we were really just talking. He just wanted to understand who I was and not really talk about business or anything like that. But then about a month later, we met again. And he came here to the campus, and we walked around. At the time, we had just acquired a lease on this property, but we were about to get our first group of students a year later. And so he came, we walked around, and we talked about how we could possibly collaborate in these two visions that we had about how ALA could be a feeder into his university academy level of excellence and so on. But unfortunately, just about a month after we met, Miko passed away and never was able to see his dream of the Academy of Excellence come to life. And so today, when we look at what we're doing here at ALA, we feel quite honored to be really implementing a vision that such a great man had for Africa. We are really excited and honored to be carrying out a dream that he unfortunately wasn't able to see. We have full confidence that the young leaders that we see here and that have already graduated and that we're going to be developing over the next 50 years have the ideas and the skills and the passion to really transform Africa. And that's really what we're trying to do here with this African Leadership Academy. And I encourage you to meet these young leaders and get to know them, and to meet our faculty and everyone who's working very hard to make this institution come alive in the vision that Miko Rwayitare had. And we're also very excited that we're partnering with the Rwayitare family. So his daughter Ayele sits on our advisory board. And we've been having discussions about different ways in which we can work together. And so I want to just talk a little bit about this concept of the African Heroes Day and why we're doing this thing. We, in the spirit of creating the next generation of leaders for Africa, believe in looking to role models and looking at people who have actually done exceptional things in the service of this continent. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who have served Africa go unnoticed, and their stories are not told. And so we thought that once a year, we would have an event that would celebrate an African who has done something exceptional for the continent, someone who has really had a major contribution, but hasn't necessarily been recognized as much as he or she could. And when we thought about doing the first one, we could think of no other person to honor than Miko Rwayitare. Because you see, this instrument that we all have, that we all depend on so much here in Africa, 400 million people in Africa today have a cell phone. And I'm sure, as all of you know, we cannot live without this device, right? But one person, we wouldn't start it at all. He really kicked it off for us in Africa. And this was Miko Rwayitare, the first person to make a mobile phone call on the continent. And so the idea behind the African Heroes Day is really to celebrate the life and accomplishments of Miko Rwayitare. We want to celebrate the wonderful contributions that he has made to Africa, and also to inspire the young leaders that we want to follow in his footsteps to also look at how they can contribute towards shaping the future of Africa. So not everyone sitting here is going to impact 400 million people, but we can all, in our own way, even if it's impacting 5 people or 20 people, it all adds up. And eventually, as leaders, we can change the future of Africa. And so one of the things we've done is we wrote a case study on Mr. Rwayitare, which all of you actually have in your folders. And a few days ago, our young leaders actually did the case study, and they learned about this great man, this man who has done great things for Africa, that most of them had never heard about. And you can see already the inspiration that is taking place. And every time I read this case study and look at all the things that this man did, it's really, really inspiring. And so that's really what this is today. It's a day for us to think about, to reflect on what one person has done to really bring about transformation in Africa, and for us to think about what we all can do to continue in his legacy, and to think about how we can also make our contribution to this continent. So I'd like to thank a few people without whom this day would not be possible. First of all, I'd like to thank the members of Miko's family who have come, some from very far to be with us today. People like Ayele, who came from Uganda, and her mom, who came from Durban, and several other members of the family. Obviously, Miko's brother Albert, who we really have been working with very closely over the last few months to put this whole event together. So first and foremost, we'd really like to say thank you to the family for joining with us in celebrating Miko's legacy here today. Also like to make a big thank you to all the friends, all of you. As our MC mentioned, this is where the ALA group is sitting, and this is where all the friends are sitting. It's wonderful to see that they're almost the same size. But really, this also speaks to how much Miko touched people's lives, and that so many people have come, and some have come from all over the world, really, to be here. People like Joe Gatt and his daughter. You'll be hearing later from Joe, who was one of the co-founders of Telecel, and they worked together with Miko. And he's flown all the way, from DC. I met with him. We met in DC in July and invited him, and he said, "Yeah, I'm going to come." And he's flown all the way down here. So, and people like Paul Bugingo, who's come all the way from London, and Emabo, who's come from from Zimbabwe to be with us, and so many other people who have come. So once again, welcome and thank you for coming all the way to join us in this celebration. And then I'd also like to thank everyone here at the Academy who has been working so hard to make this event possible. Especially Miss Ashley Nell over there, who's been pulling her hair out. And Gavin Peter, who's involved in all our events here on campus. Naomi, where's Naomi? Somewhere. And all the students as well, who have and Leanne, who's been involved in organizing the catering and so on and so forth. I'd also like to thank Ms. Lebo Mapetla and her partner, Mkuseli, who's unfortunately not here, but Lebo is here with us, who Lebo generously contributed to sponsoring the cost for this event. So I'd also like to thank you. So I'll leave it at that, but really, just in summary, I want to say that today is a celebration. we want to celebrate the wonderful accomplishments of this man, and really think about how, we as ALA can continue living this legacy. Because when I think about Miko, not only did he have big ideas, and not only did he take steps to actually make those ideas come to life, which is what we want all these young leaders to do, but he also thought about giving back to society. All the work that he was doing was not only to enrich himself, but he was working towards a dream that was ultimately going to give back to the continent in building the Academy of Excellence that he had. And it's only unfortunate that he wasn't able to see that happen. But we feel lucky that we were able to do it, and let's keep this dream alive so that we can actually ultimately see the impact that Miko dreamt of, that it can be lived through our efforts here and through the efforts of these young leaders. So thank you all for coming, and let's enjoy the day.
I will try with my broken English to print something in your heart today. I'm a pastor, as Emable said, but I'm as well civil engineer. And you can understand. Yes, if we go into the Bible, before I open prayer, I would like to print something in your hearts today. The psalmist says in Psalm, I think 90, he said this: "For all our days have declined in your fury. We have finished our years like a sight. As for the day of our life, they contain 70 years, or if due to strength, 80 years. Yet their pride is but labor and sorrow. For soon it's gone and we fly away. Who understands the power of your anger and your fury, according to the fear that is due to you? So teach us to number our days, that we may present to you a heart of wisdom." As I said before, I open in prayer. I would like to share with you some truth that I've learned from two recent bestsellers, books, and I beg you, please meditate on these truths. You know, Bertrand Russell, an atheist, said this: "Unless you assume a God, the question of life's purpose is meaningless." But as a Christian, when we read in Colossians 1, verse 16, the Word of God says this: "For everything, absolutely everything, above and below, visible and invisible, everything God started in Him and finds its purpose in Him." I mean, in God. Rick Warren, in his book, I think that most of you know about that book, The Purpose-Driven Life. He says this: If you want to know why you were placed on this planet, you must begin with God. Because you were born by His purpose and for His purpose. Most of the time, we ask self-centered questions like, what do I want to be? What should I do with my life? What are my goals, my ambitions, and my dreams for my future? I think that most of you, the students, I'm sure that you are asking these kind of questions. But focusing on ourselves will never reveal our life's purpose. The Bible says it's God who directs the lives of His creatures. Everyone's life is in His power. You can arrive at your life's purpose by starting with a focus on yourself. You cannot, You must begin with God, your creator. You exist only because God wills that you exist. You were made by God and for God. Many people try to use God for their own self-actualization, but this is a reversal of nature and is doomed to failure. Self-help books and philosophy can offer steps to finding your life's purpose. Consider your dreams, clarify your values, set some goals, figure out what you are good at, aim high, and even lead to success. You could reach all your personal goals, becoming a raving success by the world's standards, and still miss the purpose for which God created you. You must become what God created you to be. You can speculate to discover the purpose of your life, the purpose you were created for. But even the wisest philosopher will guess. But only God can give you a revelation about life in His Word. He is is not just the starting point of your life. He is the source of your life. You are not an accident. It's not fate, no chance, no luck, no coincidence that you are breathing at this very moment. It is because God wanted to create you. He custom-made you and determined the natural talents you would possess and the uniqueness of your personality. He planned also when you would be born and how long you would live. He planned how and where you would be born and where you would live for His purpose. Dear friends and brothers and sisters, if we are gathering today here, it's surely because Miko fulfilled not only his own purpose in life, but mostly because he fulfilled God's purpose for his life. If it was only for earthly purposes. We won't be gathering here, as the Word of God says. These earthly purposes are for a time, and they will disappear. Miko was created for eternity, and his works will last for eternity. He fully understood that. This is why we can remember today all the good things he did for humanity. Another great man of God, Joseph Prince, wrote this in his book entitled, "We Are Destined to Reign." And he said, "We are called by the Lord to be a success, to enjoy wealth, to enjoy health, and to enjoy a life of victory. It is not the Lord's desire that you live a life of defeat, poverty, and failure. He has called us to be the head and not the tail. If you are a businessman, God wants you to have a prosperous business. If you are a homemaker, you are anointed to bring up wonderful children in the Lord. If you are a student, God wants you to excel in all your examinations. And if you trust the Lord for a new career, He does not just want you to have a job. He wants you to have a position of influence, a position of impact, so that you can be a blessing and an asset to your organization. Whatever your vocation is, you are destined to reign in life because Jesus is the Lord of your life. But knowing that everything is by God's grace, never say in your heart, my power and the strength of my hand made me this wealth. But you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gave you power to make wealth, says the word of God. I can testify today that Miko knew all these things. I can say that he acknowledged this truth. Having shared that with you, I would like humbly to invite you to just for a minute bow your heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, you are Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. And I commit everything into your hands. Be the Lord of these moments. By your presence, lead us, guide us, and be in control of these ceremonies. We acknowledge your greatness in Miko's life. You are the one who gave him to the humanity for your purpose. And you decided one day, on your time, to bring him back to you. Teach us, Lord, to number the days of our lives, that we may present to you a heart of wisdom. Let these moments of remembrance be a blessing to us and an opportunity to pour your grace upon us. I've prayed then in Jesus' name, amen. God bless you.
To sing is a chant. It's from Congo. It's in Lingala. It's for those who know Congolese musicians. It was sung by Tabule. We're just singing the beginning part of it. It means, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Muzina nyi Papa, enyi Mwana, enyi Pepe Sanctu. Okay?
Our guests, faculty, members of staff, fellow students, good afternoon. I just want you to take a moment and picture yourself as a package wrapped in a box. And the wrapping represents, let's say, your race, your ethnicity, your nationality, maybe your physical appearance. And because you're on the inside, you have no control over whether the ribbon that wraps you is red or yellow or blue or gray. And naturally, when you receive a package, you'd be more concerned with what is inside than the wrapping. I want to draw you to a situation where the wrapping prevailed over the content. So in 1994, Mr. Miko found himself forced to flee from Zaire because the president had ordered that all Tutsis were to leave the country or face the death penalty. So at this point, forget that he had strived to bring mobile communication into DRC, and it was actually government officials who were among the first people to be enjoying this luxury. At this point, the content didn't matter, only the wrapping. So he fled. Many of us in this room can identify with ethnic tension. Some of us here have had to flee for our lives, at times waiting longer in a queue because of your ethnicity, maybe at one time not being able to cross to one region of your country because you are unacceptable in that area. Fortunately for us in this room, Mr. Miko's dream was not bound by his location, by his ethnicity, or by politics. He took his dream with him, he left the country, and he continued to work at it from South Africa. The raging entrepreneur inside him would not let him give up on what he believed in, just because someone thought that the wrapping was more important than the package. This is one of the reasons why I choose to sing Mr. Miko's song today. It is important that we learn to bless things in our pain, and we learn to bless them even if it is in silence. Especially today, because in this era, one man's strife has turned into the wonders of the earth. Mr. Miko's battle for his dream, his race for his life, and his persistence for Africans has enabled our motherland to rise so tremendously out of a pit where people were wallowing in silence and the world just took pity on us and said, it's so difficult to invest in Africa. Today I can call my mom when I feel homesick. You can call Mr. Peter when you're at the airport, or when you just had to get that burger at the mall and the bus left you. It is important that we don't let these miracles of the past slip into darkness by forgetting our privileges. Mr. Miko devoted his whole life to a dream that has revolutionized our continent. And we cannot thank him personally today, but we can bless him in our pain, and we can bless him even if it is in silence. I am personally most encouraged by Mr. Miko's approach to Africa and to Africans. Now, how many of us here have ever watched a science fiction movie, or just a regular movie, and you saw something that you thought was amazing, and you said, when my country gets there, the world will already be over? Or sometimes you go to a government office, and the document processing is not computerized, so you have to wait for hours and hours and hours, and you're very content to say, TIA, this is Africa. I honestly have done this so many times, and sometimes I've felt as though I have a defeatist mentality. But I realized it's important to distinguish between the Africa facing us today, the Africa that we want to see and we want to create. Mr. Miko saw the Africa that he was facing, and he also saw what he wanted to see, and he went ahead and created it. I believe that being able to distinguish between what is and what could be is what pushed Mr. Miko so hard to fight for what we have today. Not only did he do this, but he believed in Africans to do it for themselves. At a time when most multinational companies were being headed by expatriates, Mr. Miko did bring in expatriates, yes, but only to train the local people how to run those companies, and then they moved on from one country to another, imparting knowledge and then leaving. Mr. Miko saw an Africa spearheaded by Africans, and he fought for it not politically, but through the corporate decisions that he made. He was, as we say, a man of the people. He believed in the capability of Africans to take charge of their own development. He pursued and achieved his goals, despite he himself being pursued by ethnic tensions. And he paved the way for you and me today to live a much easier life. To be nothing short of a disgrace if we fail to bless him in our pain, if we fail to bless him, even if it is in silence. One of our first-year students recently gave me some advice. And she told me, when people sit, you stand. When they stand, you become outstanding. When they become outstanding, you become the standard measure. And for us, who are so eager to emancipate our people from the constraints of life, we are eager to succeed despite facing hurdles that seem insurmountable. For us who are eager to fight for a more empowered Africa, Mr. Miko is indeed the standard measure. So today we bless him in our pain, and we bless him even if it is in silence. Amen.
My apology first for my emotion. Dear family, friends, and young students here, our future leaders, and the whole team of LA. Ladies and gentlemen, exactly 3 years ago today, on the 25th of September 2007, Miko Rwayitare passed away in Belgium. He was 65 years old. I wish to thank you all for coming here today to remember a great entrepreneur, husband, father, and friend. I stand here before you as a representative of the family. All Miko's children, our mother, brother, my sister here as well, and also for all other members of our family who were not in a position to join us and participate in this ceremony. We know that their minds and hearts are with us. we thank them as well. We and Africa as a whole were left poorer by Miko's untimely departure. We lost a man who was the very essence of compassion, intelligent, empathy, leadership, and integrity. One of Miko's greatest dream was a creation of an academy of excellence. I think Fred spoke about it. To bring prosperity to Africa by promoting its most important resources, the youth, and among the youth, the brightness mind of the continent. So it's only fitting that the ceremony is organized here at African Leadership Academy, an organization whose objective closely match with Miko's ambition. I wish to thank the LA leadership for hosting us and for organizing this beautiful event. I'm very touched, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And my special thanks also to those of you who have traveled, sometimes from thousands of kilometers away, to be with us today. I think Fred mentioned some of them, and I would like to add a few he forget, like Serge came from Central Africa, and his cousin. Billy Young came from Uganda. Patrick from Cape Town. Francis, the husband of Aele, arrived in the same time also yesterday from Kigali. Dr. Nkusi, he flew in from Botswana. Dr. Subira and his wife, family, they came in from Swaziland. I have my sister here. She flew in with her kids yesterday as well from Kigali. And there's a Toyo, I don't know where he is. He arrived from Nigeria. I think you forget to mention him as well. We really appreciate the tremendous influence you had on Miko's life, and we are very honored to have you here. To you, Miko, my brother, my friend, Miko, you were right, not because others agreed with you, but because your facts were right. You taught us to have the courage to stick with a tough job, to follow our instincts. You taught us to put integrity on the center of our lives, to work with passion, and to have clear vision for the future. We learned a lot from you, how to respect people from who they are, not for what the title and position are in society, and that we should never listen to the naysayers or limit ourselves. Miko used to tell us, be great or get out. Go big or go home. As a representative of family, I believe that it will be a good idea to give you some news, some good news. We have had an eventful year, this year in 2010. My nephew and nieces, Miko's children, are all doing well. His daughter Kibibi got married in May in Boston. Her brother Gadi just got married a few weeks ago in Indiana. And Uwera is following earlier next year, getting married in New York. Also, the last boy, he finished high school, is now going to university. So we really thank God we have been blessed many times this year. Lastly, I'm pleased to inform you that Miko's family have planned to ensure that Miko's legacy lives on. His extraordinary story needs to be told. And I take this opportunity to announce that we plan to get his biography written in the form of a book. The book will be written by a fellow compatriot and a friend. And we know many of you share fond memory of Miko, and we urge and invite you to share them with us. Please contact us when you have a time. Brother and sister, friends, ladies and gentlemen, before I step down from this podium, I ask you to reflect for a few seconds. We all need to realize how time flies and how little time we have. Let's act. Our continent needs you. They need us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your patience. So I'll give a brief talk today really around how mobile telephony is changing the face of finance here in Africa. And I'll demonstrate to you what we are doing in Nigeria particularly. Just to get right to it, I went to school in the United States, and 7 years in the States without coming back to Nigeria, my home country, primarily because I couldn't afford it and just put all my money towards school. And when I came back, one of the things that really frustrated me, I remember this particular day, I hadn't seen my best friend in 7 years. She called me that morning. We're one of the few, who are fortunate to actually have a landline in our house. I actually remember you have to pick up the phone. Most of you probably don't know this, but you picked up the phone and waited to get a dial tone, right? And so you press, many times before you get a dial tone. So here she is. She sets out to come to my house. At about 12, we're supposed to meet. 5 o'clock, I still haven't seen her. And I'm completely frustrated because I was now wondering, how can a society survive without mobile telephony and just being able to communicate and know what was going on? You fast forward 10 years later, and in that 10-year span, 316 million mobile phone subscribers in Africa, right? 316 million in 10 years. No one could have predicted this growth, right? Safaricom of Kenya, who many of you might know, the Kenyan folks in the back are raising their hands. In 1999, Safaricom of Kenya predicted that by 2020, they will have 3 million mobile phone subscribers. By the end of last year, 2009, they had 14 million, right? So no one predicted this kind of growth. 11.2 million square kilometers of Africa is covered by mobile phone coverage today. Let's pause for a second. That is the combined size of the United States of America and Argentina, right? Two very large countries. 60% of Africans are within mobile phone coverage today. In my home country of Nigeria, there's 75 million subscribers, and that is expected to grow about 10% year over year, even if these numbers are overestimated to Joe's point of having more subscribers than actual citizens. It's still a huge amount of the population that has cell phones, right? And what does this mean? I actually think to Africa, mobile phones is as to what computers were to the West, right? So if you think of the kind of productivity gains that came at two different inflection points for the Western world. One was when IBM came out with a computer and the kind of productivity gains that happened there. And then the kind of productivity gains that happened when Cisco, who I used to work for, came out with the Internet Protocol and actually now connected those computers together in the World Wide Web, right? I mean, those kind of gains are what we are already seeing in Africa, and the impact we're already seeing in multiple ways. And I'll just talk about a few of them before I talk about what we are doing in Nigeria. We're seeing the mobile phone being used to address social challenges in very interesting ways, whether it's a farmer in Ghana who can now, using Esoko, with the most basic SMS phone, send an SMS to find out what are the prices of his tomatoes in Accra compared to Kumasi. So he can make an informed decision on where to go to actually sell his tomatoes, right? Or whether it's in also Ghana and Nigeria, where you can send an SMS in to M-Pedigree to find out if the drugs that you just purchased are actually valid, are actually real drugs. This is technology that was developed here in Africa and is actually going to be used across the world. right? Or whether you're thinking of even stuff that's done here out of South Africa, where the Shuttleworth Foundation is sponsoring a very interesting project on M for Lit, they call it. And because kids are using the mobile phone all the time. And so the question is, how do you actually encourage kids to read books? Well, they don't want to read a book, but they're happy to read Shakespeare on their phone. So you provide Shakespeare on the phone. And that's what they're doing with M for Lit. They're already rolling it out on Mixit, for those of you that use Mixit, and also just directly via Mobi website. And this is actually gaining a lot of traction. Or again in Kenya, during the infamous elections, a group of informed citizens came together and said, how can we participate? How can we use the mobile phone to mobilize people to bring some accountability to what was going on? And thus was the vision behind Ushahidi. Ushahidi allowed anyone to send a simple SMS to say, this is going on in XYZ place. And as everybody sends this information in, it self-validates itself and actually disseminates that information through a website where you can actually get a map and see where the fire points are in Kenya. Now, this technology has been used all over the world now. It was used in Haiti. It was used in Pakistan during the most recent floodings. And it's been used for election monitoring in a number of places. We are going to use it for election monitoring this next year in Nigeria. And then finally, the large conglomerates are also taking notice, right? Google launched a product last year called Google Trader. It was first launched in Uganda. And I believe it's probably the first product that Google is launching that the first launch was Africa. And what Google Trader allows you to do is allow someone to post their goods for sale on, using SMS, and other people to search for those goods and services. And then you get a phone number that you can now call someone and actually execute on the transaction, right? So the large conglomerates are also paying attention. I'm sure many of you might have seen IBM just 2 weeks ago, I think it was, with a big announcement about their focus on Africa and their partnership with Bharti Airtel, which is actually going to change the landscape of telecommunications and reduce the cost significantly across Africa as they acquired Zain. So we think, there's already a lot of things that we're seeing. And when I was looking at a number of different business ideas, the question that I asked myself was, can the cell phone be used to address what was then my biggest frustration after 6 months in Nigeria? The frustration was that even though I had a debit card and I had credit cards from outside of Nigeria, I had to carry cash everywhere I go. And if you've ever been to Nigeria, our notes are actually quite big, right? And it costs a lot. So it's very unsafe. People are carrying, money around. Very few people have bank accounts in Nigeria. Across Africa, only 25% of Africans have access to formal financial services. In Nigeria, that number is 20%. And when you drill into the numbers further, it's actually only 5% of Nigerians that actually have active accounts. What does this mean? 95% of Nigerians are walking around with cash on them, sending cash home in very unsafe means, going to motor parks to give the money to a driver going to their village to please deliver on their behalf, saving money underneath their mattress, right? Or with collectors in the markets who we call Esusu collectors, right? And with no recourse. If that person dies, their money is gone, right? And so I looked at this and I said, but all of them are walking around with one or two of these phones, right? Most Nigerians carry two phones, not because of bad network coverage, but actually because if you're an MTN, I'm going to call you an MTN because it's cheaper, right? So I'll have an MTN line, I'll have a Zain line, and so when I'm calling a Zain number, I'll use Zain to call you, right? But everybody has these phones, and so what can we use? Can we use the phone to actually change the situation? And I believe very strongly, and absurdly probably, that the ubiquity of the mobile phone is going to be a major game changer for Africa, and that the ubiquity of the mobile phone would help drive financial access to the base of the pyramid. And that is the idea behind the company I founded last year called Pagatech. We are launching a direct-to-consumer mobile payment service called Paga. And just Thursday, we reached a major milestone for us where we launched our pilot. And immediately after the kickoff, I jumped in a flight to come here. So we're very excited because now we have people in Nigeria who are using Paga to send money to each other. And yesterday, someone made the first payment for their DSTV bill right from their mobile phone. And we're very excited about the possibilities that this would bring as we go forward. Our vision, and the vision myself and my co-founders, is to enable a cashless society and to bank the unbanked. We believe that we are going to get there by creating a service that people want. We're first of all launching in Nigeria with 4 key products. The ability to send money person to person, money transfer, right from your phone, buy airtime for yourself, or send airtime to your relatives, wherever they may be on any network. Pay for bills, like I said, like DSTV, your cable bill, your water bill, and then also pay when you go to merchants, right? So we're actually very much looking forward to, as Fred has been pushing me on, to bring Paga onto this campus, and so that all of you will be using Paga to do your transactions between yourselves and also at the stores here. But what we do here, is there are 2 ways you could use Paga. You could either, over your phone, use it yourself, and I'll talk about the channels, or you could go to one of our merchants. And we're building a network of merchants all over the country that are the cash-in points, cash-in and cash-out points for people. And the merchants can also do transactions for those who may not be literate enough to actually send a simple SMS. There are 5 channels where you can use Paga. The first one is simple SMS. For us, the key thing here is we have balanced security with simplicity. This has to work on the most basic of phones. And so SMS, we believe, will be a major channel. We also have an interactive voice response system, which is an automated line that you can dial into, and you can do your transaction over the phone. We have a very cool online site where you can also go in, for those who do have access to the internet, either from your mobile phone or on your PC, to do a transaction. And then for those who do have smartphones, we have a Java-enabled phone. And then finally, we have something called unstructured supplemental data, USSD. Most of you in South Africa are probably aware of this, but that's when you send, when you're loading your airtime credits and you press *33#. That's USSD command. It actually can pull back an interactive menu. Press 1 for your account balance, press 2 to send money, etc. Right? So we believe SMS is going to be the most ubiquitous of all of this, and most people will do their transactions over SMS. So I'd like to show you just how easy Paga is, and do a quick demo for you. While we're at it. So I have. Actually, I guess this is Tiger Woods on my phone. But it basically says here, the road to high performance isn't always paved, which I think was part of what came out of Joe's speech as well. So this application I have is just showing what's on my BlackBerry. I'm connected wirelessly, and I'm able to just show you guys exactly what I'm doing on my phone. I'm only using this because I have an application that does that, but Paga works on any phone, the cheapest phone possible. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to check for my account balance. To check for my account balance, all I do is I send a message to Paga and I type balance. And that's going to, once that gets delivered, I should get my account balance back. So it's been delivered. Now, this is a Nigerian phone, just so you know, so I'm roaming, right? So I'm signed up for Paga in Nigeria, but I'm roaming across the world, I could still transact. And he tells you I have 37,200 on my account. I'm going to save that. Now, this is actually real money because this is our live pilot, right? So I'm actually going to send money to myself, my other phone. So if I want to send 1,000 naira, all I do is I type send 1,000, and I type the phone number, 0813-623-1750. That's it, right? I type send 1,000, and it goes off. Now, you notice I did not put a PIN number or anything of that nature. and it immediately comes through. My other phone is buzzing because it just got a text message as well. And the text message here tells me I have sent 1,000 naira to this phone number, and my account balance is now 36,000 naira. Now, if this phone number was not yet registered with Paga, this message would actually have also given me a withdrawal code on the sender, so that now the recipient can go and get the money out from any one of our merchants. So the easiest way for those of you who are familiar with PayPal and Western Union to think of what we are doing in the first phase is a combination of PayPal and Western Union together, right? And that's what we're delivering in the first phase. We also have a very cool BlackBerry application for those who do have access to BlackBerry. So I put in my phone number. And I put in my PIN number. There are a lot of things we do from a security perspective. We actually monitor what device you're coming from. If you come from a different device, we'll actually ask you security questions. And then right from this kind of an application, you can actually do your transactions very easily, right? So those are the key things that we're doing. The initial, and that's just the initial phase. The future is actually in my hands right here, right? This is the phone I'm using to present and to click through my presentation. But this phone is a NFC phone. NFC is near field communications. Many of you are familiar with Bluetooth, right? Where you can send between phones, right? NFC is a new form of RFID and is a more secure form of RFID. So on this phone, and I'll be happy to show this to any of you after the talk, on this phone I have a Visa card and I have a MasterCard, and I also have a Paga card on this phone. The same Paga account I just used over SMS. So now when I want to pay for a transaction, and this phone only cost me $400, by the way, right? And when I want to pay for a transaction, I get to the, well, so $400 is expensive for you guys, but that's why I said it's the future. But if you think about it this way, that's a good point. If you think about it this way, in Nigeria, I am actually quite amazed at the number of Nigerians that carry BlackBerries. All the way down to university kids. This BlackBerry cost me $700 in Nigeria. And this BlackBerry is nowhere as cool in what it can do as this phone, right? So the price point will come down. There's no doubt about it in my mind. But it is the future. And when I want to check out when I go to a ShopRite and I want to check out, now all I do is I put my phone close to the reader, and it asks me which card do you want to use, Visa, MasterCard, or Paga, and I select Paga, and I go through. So this is where we are going, and I don't think that future is very far at all from us. I'll make the point that some of the things I've shown you are not the things that the base of the pyramid would use. Right? We have a service that is for all Nigerians and really all Africans. There's some of it that will be focused really around the base of the pyramid and bringing financial access to them, right? But I think all of these things would eventually leapfrog and get to them as well. We conservatively believe that in just 5 years, we will bring financial access to 30 million Nigerians. And this is based on a very conservative assumption that only 25% of Nigerians are using any form of mobile payments, right? To give you a comparison, in Kenya, when M-Pesa, which many of you might know, came out, in just 2 years, 20% of the Kenyan population is using M-Pesa, right? So we think our estimation is very conservative, and we think that we'll actually go past this number. I am very inspired by the stories I've heard of Miko. I never had a chance to meet him. But you know, what really strikes me is that the frustration that he had and the fact that he went after that vision, as absurd as it may have sounded to everyone that he knocked on, he did not give up. And he went after that vision in a principled way, is very exciting to me, and is the things that actually drive me, right? Is that I believe in my country where people talk of corruption, we can actually build a company that is above the board and that is very principled. And this is exactly why I'm also excited about what Fred and Chris are doing here, right? And all of you, right? And really the opportunity for you is to follow these kind of stories as I'm trying to follow as well, and following their steps and go after your dreams. And I think Miko will be very excited to see you guys do that as well, because I think, as Fred was saying earlier, not all of us may impact 400 million people, but every life we touch is a difference to this continent, and by bringing proper leadership to various aspects of society is really important and would get us much further in the future. 24 years later, I don't think Miko could have predicted how this would have gone, but now mobile phones are everywhere. I'm very excited about the entrepreneurs and the businesses that are starting around this technology. For me, one of the key turning points, when I sort of think of trends in Africa, the key turning points for me is seeing people who've gone to school abroad immediately come back, right, and not stay abroad. The brain drain is turning around, and I think that is very exciting because people are coming back to start businesses here and to actually make a difference. And I think those are the kinds of things that that will drive growth in this country, or in this continent. And so just in closing, I would like to say a big thank you to Miko Rwayitare for going after his vision, for his gift to Africa, and frankly, for his gift to me, and for bringing the cell phone to this continent, and for giving me an opportunity to pursue my dream of bringing financial access to the base of the pyramid.
Good afternoon, everybody. What an inspiring morning, and it has really underlined all that we hope to achieve at the African Leadership Academy. So it's particularly inspiring. I'd really like to thank Miko's family and friends for your gracious permission and your cooperation in making this morning possible, for allowing us to use him as a shining example of leadership and entrepreneurship, the leadership and entrepreneurship we're trying to teach at the African Leadership Academy. I thank all the speakers who have just underlined everything we've been trying to teach, and underlining the importance of things like vision and integrity, and having a dream and having the tenacity to pursue that dream, to endure the pain, and to come out victorious on the other side. So thank you to the speakers. Thank you to all our guests, especially those who have traveled from a long distance. And we hope you've enjoyed your time with us, and please join us for lunch.